Hi there, I'm Marcy. It happened at my sister's birthday. I found out $9,300 was missing from a locked drawer in my room. They didn't deny it. They laughed, said I could afford it. But that wasn't the worst part. Worse was realizing how long they'd been using me, signing my name on loans, stealing money behind my back, while calling it family help. Now they're broke, and I'm the one picking up the pieces of my bank account and my trust. The moment I stepped out of my car and onto the gravel driveway of the rental cabin in Colorado Springs, something felt off. The air wasn't cold, but there was a sting to it. Maybe it was the way my sister's kids were shrieking before I even made it to the porch. Or maybe it was Leonard's voice, already slurred, shouting something from the backyard like it was his house. I took a deep breath, adjusted my purse strap, and grabbed my small travel bag from the back seat. Jared couldn't make it. A last-minute case had pulled him into the office all weekend. I told him I'd be fine. It's just one night with family, I'd said, but my gut had known better. Inside, chaos reigned. Toys were scattered across the floor. Someone had burned something in the kitchen, maybe garlic bread, and Rosalind, our mother, was already flitting around the living room in that tight smile she always wore when pretending everything was perfect. "Marcy!" she called with fake cheer, pulling me into a one-armed hug, careful not to spill her wine. "You made it just in time. We're about to bring out the cake." I didn't care about the cake. I didn't come for balloons or candles or Darlene's faux gratitude. I came because I told myself I could handle them this time, that I'd grown enough spine over the years to not let their words cut as deep. After a few pleasantries, I made my way upstairs to the guest room and locked the door behind me. I opened my briefcase, took out a white envelope, and placed it inside the top drawer of the desk, which had a small metal lock. It wasn't Fort Knox, but it was better than nothing. That envelope held $9,300 in cash, my portion of a down payment Jared and I were planning to use for a real estate investment. I didn't want it in the bank just yet, not until we finalized paperwork. I double-checked the lock, pulled on the drawer gently. It held. Then I exhaled. Downstairs, laughter erupted over a game of charades. I could hear Darlene's voice dominating the room as usual. She always had a way of making everything orbit around her, even if it was just her birthday. I washed up, joined them for dinner, and smiled through conversations I didn't care about. We talked about the weather, someone's diet, and how expensive gas was. No one asked how my job was going or how I was feeling lately. That would have been too much like caring. The night wore on. Darlene unwrapped her gifts with performative surprise. Leonard kissed her cheek, handed her an envelope, and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "You deserve the world, babe." I kept my mouth shut. When I finally slipped back into the guest room, it was past midnight. I locked the door again, crawled into bed, and tried not to think too hard about how disconnected I felt from everyone in that house. Family was supposed to feel like home. Instead, I felt like a tenant overstaying my welcome. The next morning, I woke up early, habit from work. I stretched, yawned, and reached for my toiletry bag. That's when I noticed something was wrong. The drawer. It was slightly ajar. My heart stalled. I knelt down. The lock was broken, split clean where the metal met the frame. The envelope was gone. I stood frozen, staring at the cracked lock like it would rewind time if I looked hard enough. No, 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 no. I yanked the drawer open, empty. I shoved my hands into the back, thinking maybe, just maybe, it had fallen behind. But there was nothing. My pulse thundered. My mind raced. I rushed downstairs, barely aware of how tight my grip was on the railing. They were all gathered in the kitchen, laughing over eggs and pancakes like we were the cast of some damn sitcom. "Who was in my room?" I demanded, my voice cutting through the room like a slap. The laughter stopped. Darlene looked up with a mouthful of toast. "Good morning to you, too. My drawer was broken into, $9,000. Gone." Leonard chuckled. Oh, that. Oh, that? I needed to pay off some stuff, he said casually, like he'd borrowed a pen. "We figured you'd understand." "You what?" My throat went dry. Darlene raised a brow. "Relax, Marcy. You always have money. It's not like you're hurting. Leonard's been drowning in debt. This helps us out." This wasn't a loan. I said, trying to keep my voice from cracking. You stole it. We didn't steal anything, she snapped. You left cash lying around. In a drawer, in a house full of family. What did you think would happen? I locked it. Leonard shrugged. Wasn't a good lock. You broke into it. Darlene rolled her eyes. God, you're so dramatic. You don't have kids. You don't pay for daycare, school supplies, doctor bills. You're living some solo glam life. It's time you shared the load. I stared at her, heart pounding. Her words didn't just justify theft. They rewrote reality, where my success meant I owed them, where boundaries didn't apply if someone called you family. No one said a word in my defense. Not Rosalind, not Clayton, not even the kids, who were too busy fighting over cereal. I sat at the table, stunned. My coffee went cold in front of me. They laughed. Darlene joked about her birthday party being perfect. Leonard kissed her again, like they hadn't just violated me. And all I could think was, if they did this once, they'll do it again. They already believed they had the right. And maybe they always did. I didn't touch my breakfast. I just sat there, numb, as Darlene laughed like she'd won something. Maybe she had. She took what she wanted, and no one blinked. The cabin felt smaller that morning, like the air had been sucked out of every room. Every time someone said family, it scraped like sandpaper across my skin. Later, when most of them scattered to the backyard, I cornered my mother in the kitchen. She was wiping down the counter like it was any other Sunday. The dish rag moved in slow, circular strokes, so casual it made me angrier. Mom, I said quietly, do you understand what just happened? They took $9,000 from me. She didn't stop wiping. Don't make a scene, Marcy. I stared at her. I'm not making a scene. I'm telling you I was robbed. Rosalind finally looked up, her face calm but condescending. Oh, come on, you've always been dramatic. It's not like they spent it on drugs. It was for the family. The family? I echoed. You don't have children. You don't pay rent with someone else's needs in mind. You live alone. You make more money than anyone here. So yes, maybe it's time you helped in a real way. I took a step back, stunned. That was my investment money. Jared and I have been saving for months. That's not extra. That's mine. And they're your blood, she said sharply. You think some stranger would ever take care of you like your sister has? You think if things ever went south, Darlene wouldn't open her home to you? I wanted to laugh. Darlene wouldn't even share the TV remote growing up. You're acting superior again, Rosalind continued. That's your problem. Always looking down your nose because you made it out. Because you got that fancy job and a boyfriend with a briefcase. I swallowed hard. It's not about being better. It's about basic respect. Respect? She scoffed. You barely call unless it's Christmas or someone's sick. My voice dropped to a whisper. Maybe because every time I do, someone needs money. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. How dare you? I walked away. Outside, the sounds of children playing and Leonard yelling over a grill floated through the open window. It was surreal, like the theft had only happened in my head, like I was the crazy one for still caring. I needed air. By late afternoon, I was sitting under the deck, near the patch of trees that lined the back of the cabin. That's when Clayton came over. My younger brother, the only one in this family who hadn't learned to weaponize guilt. He lowered himself onto the log beside me. They shouldn't have done that. I didn't respond. He hesitated, then added, It's not the first time. I turned to him. What do you mean? He ran a hand through his hair. Sometimes Darlene asks Mom to borrow money, except she doesn't ask you. She asks through Mom. And Mom always says yes. Then later she says it was your idea, that you offered. My stomach sank. She did that when you got your first bonus, he added. Remember when you bought the new sofa for Mom's living room? Darlene picked it, and Mom told us you insisted, that you wanted to help because you felt guilty for not visiting more. I remembered that conversation. I'd just gotten promoted. I wanted to give something thoughtful. I hadn't realized I'd just been a convenient bank. How many times? I asked. Clayton shrugged. Enough. I nodded slowly. And no one thought to tell me? Mom said not to stir the pot, said you'd just get mad. I stood up. She was right. That night we sat around the dinner table again. This time no one brought up the stolen money. It was like it had vanished along with my dignity. Darlene was laughing too loud. Leonard was on his third beer. Rosalind talked about church bake sales like she hadn't just defended breaking into my room. At one point, she raised her glass. To strong families, we forgive, we forget, and we keep each other afloat. I looked around. No one met my eyes. I was there, but I wasn't one of them. After dinner, I stepped outside onto the porch. The sun was fading behind the hills, leaving streaks of burnt orange across the sky. I sat down on the steps, my arms wrapped around my knees, the weight of everything pressing in from all sides. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, and typed just one sentence. Just because it's family doesn't mean it's right. Then I locked my screen, slid the phone into my pocket, and stared into the trees. They thought they were teaching me a lesson, but they were the ones about to learn. I didn't sleep that night. After sitting on the porch until my legs went numb from the chill, I returned to the guest room and stared at the ceiling for hours. My body was still, but my mind spun like it was caught in a storm of past conversations, tone-deaf justifications, and quiet moments I'd once brushed off as just how our family is. Sometime near dawn, I closed my eyes, but I didn't drift off. Instead, something long buried cracked open. A memory. I was 17 again, standing in our old kitchen arguing with Rosalind about college. She had her arms crossed, leaning against the fridge like a warden guarding her turf. "You don't need to go out of state," she'd said with finality. "That's just asking for trouble. Girls don't need degrees to matter." I had pleaded. I'd been accepted into a university in Oregon, partial scholarship, great program. It had felt like freedom wrapped in an envelope. "I'm not going to waste money just so you can party and forget where you came from," she snapped. "You'll end up back here anyway, helping me with the others." The others being Darlene, who was already in and out of jobs, and Clayton, still a sophomore in high school. I was the reliable one, the one who picked up extra shifts, the one who filled out FAFSA forms by herself and photocopied textbooks at the library. Eventually, I stayed local. I told my friends it was for the in-state tuition. Truth was, I was guilted into staying, and too tired to fight harder. That morning, as light filtered in through the blinds, I sat up and grabbed my phone. The screen glared back at me like it knew the truth I'd ignored for years. I scrolled through the note I'd typed the night before. Just because it's family doesn't mean it's right. Then I opened another folder, an old one, titled simply, "Owe You." It was where I used to jot down reminders of things I'd agreed to pay for, usually after late-night calls or tearful texts. I hadn't looked at it in years. March 2018, $600 for Darlene's dentist. She said Leonard's check bounced. July 2019, $200 gas money for mom. She said, "God will repay you." December 2020, $1,500, Leonard's car broke down. Darlene said it's either this or he can't work. Each entry read like an invoice I'd never sent. I didn't want reimbursement. I wanted acknowledgement. Even once, a thank you that didn't sound like a sigh. As I scrolled, the screen blurred for a second, not from tears, but from exhaustion. Just before I locked my phone, Clayton knocked softly on the door. "Hey," he said. "Got a minute?" I nodded and motioned him in. He stepped in like a kid again, awkward and unsure. "I've been thinking about what we talked about yesterday," he started, eyes fixed on the rug. "There's something else you should probably know." I waited. "Remember back when I was 21, right before I moved out?" he asked. "Yeah?" "Well, Darlene and Mom, they asked me to co-sign a loan, said it was for Darlene's car insurance or some nonsense. But when I got there, the paperwork had your name on it. I asked why, and Mom said it would have built your credit if I just signed and said it was for you." My breath caught. "You signed it?" He nodded. "I didn't know any better. They told me not to tell you, that it was a surprise help thing. But I always felt weird about it." "You put my name on a payday loan?" I whispered. He winced. "Yeah, I'm sorry, Marcy. I was a dumb kid, and they made it sound harmless. I didn't even see the money, just signed what they handed me." My mouth went dry. That explained the strange bank notices I got back then. I thought it was a clerical error. I spent hours on the phone trying to correct what I thought was some mix-up, but it had been them. Again. I should have said something, he murmured. I didn't want to get between you and Mom. You were already between us, I said, but without venom. They used you. He sank into the chair across from me, ashamed. I never knew how much they took from you. They didn't just take money, I replied. They took choices. That night, when the cabin fell silent again, I stayed up writing. Not work emails, not grocery lists. I opened that old note folder and created a new page. At the top, I wrote, "No more guilt, no more silence, no more pretending this is normal." I listed every incident I could remember, not for revenge, but for clarity. I needed to see the shape of what I'd been trained to accept. As the moonlight spilled across the carpet, I finally felt my heartbeat slow. My hands didn't shake anymore. I wasn't just hurt, I was awake. I spent the morning sitting on the edge of the bed, watching sunbeams creep across the carpet. The stillness wasn't peaceful. It was loaded. Every sound from the hallway made my skin tighten. Every voice outside the window reminded me of what had been taken, and how no one cared. I needed perspective. I needed Jared. I stepped out onto the back deck and dialed him. The signal was spotty, but his voice came through, grounding me like always. "What's wrong?" he asked, instantly picking up the tone in my silence. "I have to tell you something," I said. And then I did. I laid it out, Darlene's theft, Leonard's smugness, Rosalind's manipulation, Clayton's confession, and the loan, my name, my signature. For the first time in days, I heard nothing on the other end. Then Jared's voice dropped low, calm, controlled, but ice cold. "They committed fraud, Marcy." "I know," I said. "No, you need to hear it from me. This isn't just a messed up family moment. This is bank fraud, identity misuse, unauthorized access. You have every right to report it." "But it's my family," I said, more out of reflex than reason. Jared didn't waver. "Exactly. And that's what makes it worse. They knew you'd hesitate, they counted on it." I swallowed hard, feeling shame shift into something firmer. "What do I do?" "You document everything," he said. "Start now. Every screenshot, every transfer, every signature. If anything looks off, flag it. You're not imagining this." I hung up and didn't move for several minutes. My hands weren't shaking. They were steady, like I'd finally picked a direction. Inside, I pulled out my laptop, sat cross-legged on the bed, and logged into my bank portal. I scrolled through transactions, toggled between tabs, checked archived PDFs. My eyes caught a file labeled Authorization Request, August 2022. I clicked it open. The form was filled out in my name, my address, my phone number. The signature at the bottom looked familiar, but something about the slope of the M was wrong. I tilted the screen. I'd signed hundreds of things in my life, but not that. I took a screenshot and texted it to Jared. "Does this look like me?" His response came fast. "Not even close. This is forged. Marcy, that's a felony." That word stuck. Felony. Not mistake. Not misunderstanding. Not even crossed a line. Felony. I kept digging. I found 2 more documents where someone had filled out information in my name. One even had an outdated phone number I hadn't used in years. They weren't even careful. They didn't have to be. They knew I'd never check. But the most sickening thing came from somewhere unexpected, an old group chat buried beneath months of happy birthday gifs and memes. Scrolling through, I found a voice memo. It was dated last year. I nearly skipped it, but curiosity pulled me in. I pressed play. Darlene's voice came through first, giggling. "If she ever finds out, she'll freak. But hey, it's not like she's gonna sue her own sister." Then Leonard chimed in. "Exactly, she's soft. She'll huff and puff, then move on. She always does." The audio cut off there, but my stomach had already turned. It wasn't just betrayal, it was mockery. They knew they were hurting me. They thought it was funny. I forwarded the memo to Jared, along with the forged forms. I didn't need his legal opinion this time. I knew what it was. By noon, I'd printed every piece of documentation I had. PDFs, screenshots, even emails I once brushed off. I slid them into a folder, labeled it in thick red marker, "Family Fraud, Do Not Ignore." I packed quietly, a few essentials, the folder, my dignity. That was enough. I booked a hotel in Denver and planned to leave before sunset. As I zipped up my suitcase, I opened my journal and wrote the first real declaration I'd ever allowed myself to believe. If they wanted a battle, they just got one. By late afternoon, the sky had dulled to a flat gray, the kind that made it impossible to tell what time it really was. Clouds sagged over the hills like a lid tightening on a pot ready to boil. I zipped up my overnight bag one last time and left it by the door, tucked behind the coat rack, just in case. I found Darlene alone in the kitchen, scrolling her phone and eating the last of the birthday cake straight from the box. I didn't ease into it. "I want it back," I said. My voice was low, steady. "All of it. The full 9,300. You have until tonight." She froze with the fork halfway to her mouth, then smirked. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," I replied. Her eyes didn't blink. She shoved the cake into her mouth, chewed deliberately, then sighed dramatically like I was ruining her day. "I don't have it. We needed it, Marcy. Leonard's job's been up and down. The kids—" I raised a hand. "Save it. Either you return the money or I go to the police." Darlene's entire demeanor cracked like cheap porcelain. Her face twisted, and suddenly she was trembling, backing into the counter like I'd pulled a knife. "You'd do that to me? Your own sister? You did this to yourself." She collapsed onto the bar stool and burst into sobs, loud, ugly sobs that sounded rehearsed. "I'll kill myself if you go through with this," she wailed. "Is that what you want?" I didn't flinch, but inside something flickered. I'd heard this song before, not from her, but from our mother. As if on cue, Rosalind rushed in, eyes wide. "What is going on?" "She's threatening to ruin my life," Darlene screamed. "She wants to send me to jail." Rosalind's hand flew to her chest. "Marcy, look what you're doing to your sister. You know she's fragile." "No," I said flatly. "You know what's fragile? My patience." "You're overreacting. This is family. We help each other. We've always helped each other." "This isn't help. It's theft." Rosalind's voice dropped an octave, turning syrupy and scolding all at once. "You always think you're better than us. Your job, your apartment, your fancy life." "I earned those," I snapped, "and you all decided that made me a target." The kitchen fell silent except for Darlene's hiccuped sobs. I stared at both of them, memorizing their faces in that moment, not as loved ones, but as liabilities. "I'm leaving tomorrow. If I don't have the money by the time I walk out that door, the next people you'll hear from will wear badges." I walked out without another word. Later that evening, I stood outside as Leonard grilled burgers in the front yard. A couple neighbors had wandered over, drawn by the smell or the spectacle. I wasn't sure. He was in rare form, laughing too loud and gripping a red Solo cup like it held holy water. "Man, it feels good to finally be caught up," he bragged, flipping a patty with theatrical flair. "Wiped out the credit cards, car payment, even sent a little extra to the electric company. Took some guts, but hey, worth it." One of the neighbors glanced at me. "That true? You helped them out?" I didn't answer, just stared straight ahead. But my jaw clenched, and I felt the heat rising behind my eyes. Not tears, fury. Leonard grinned. "She's shy, but yeah, family steps up, right? We don't all have it easy." Another neighbor raised his beer can. "Lucky man." Lucky. That's what they called it. What they did to me. I went inside and grabbed the folder. I laid everything out on the bed, photos of the drawer, screenshots of the fake signature, the voice memo, even printed texts that looked harmless until you read them in the context of a con. Then I sat down and opened my laptop. Jared's name popped up immediately on the chat app we always used. I typed, "I'm ready." Then I hit send. 15 minutes later, everything had been emailed, subject line bold and simple. "Filing now." I didn't tell anyone else in the house, not about the email, not about the folder, not about the hotel in Denver. They were in the living room again, laughing like nothing had happened. Darlene was on the couch, curled against Leonard like a kitten. Rosalind sat near the fireplace, knitting, humming to herself. I watched them for a full minute before turning toward the stairs. Tomorrow, they'd wake up to find me gone, and with me would go their silence, their leverage, their immunity. Tomorrow, they'd laugh for the last time. Morning light filtered through the blinds of my Denver apartment like a soft warning. This was the beginning of a different kind of war. I poured myself coffee, but I didn't drink it. My appetite was gone. I hadn't slept much after the drive back, but for the first time in weeks, the weight pressing down on my chest felt manageable, controlled, directed. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop again. No distractions, no excuses. It was time to see how far this rabbit hole really went. The bank portal was slow, but I knew exactly what to search for now. Recurring transfers, deposits, any activity involving a secondary account. I filtered for the last 3 years, heart rate climbing as a string of small yet consistent withdrawals appeared. All marked FAM Fund or Care Transfer, all withdrawn from my personal account. I stared at the screen in disbelief. There was no family fund. I'd never authorized a single one of these. The amounts weren't huge individually, $200 here, $350 there, but together, over $12,000, enough to make someone's car payment, or pay off credit card debt, or control someone silently, one small drip at a time. I cross-referenced the routing numbers. They traced back to an account in my mother's name, Rosalind. I took a photo of the transactions and sent them to Jared. He replied within minutes. These are systematic, long-term misappropriation. This strengthens the fraud case. I leaned back in my chair, numb and furious. She had told me it was grocery money for the grandkids. Once. She never said it was recurring. Never said she set up automatic withdrawals using information she clearly never should have had. She used me like a silent ATM, and I never even heard the beeping. Then Jared sent another message. No words, just an image attachment. I opened it and went cold. Leonard, grinning like he'd won the lottery, posed in front of a chain restaurant in what looked like a staged casual photo. His wrist gleamed, a silver Omega watch, identical to the one Jared gave me last year when I made partner. Same model, same band, same rare engraving. The caption under the post read, "Finally matching the big shots." That watch wasn't in stores. It was part of a limited drop. Jared had to pull strings to find it. I zoomed in. It was my watch. Mine. I had left it at the cabin weeks ago during a spring visit, thinking I misplaced it. I sent the photo to Jared. "Stolen," I wrote. "He's taunting us." He replied, "We escalate." That's exactly what I did. I compiled every record, bank transactions, voice memos, screenshots, photos, and uploaded it all into a secure folder Jared had set up for the Financial Crimes Division. Every page told the same story. This wasn't a mistake. This was a slow, methodical siphoning of trust disguised as support and family. I filed the formal complaint. It was done. And for the first time, I felt powerful. Not because I won, but because I finally stopped pretending to lose. Next, I called a private investigator. I gave them everything I had, asked them to trace older activities, including transactions tied to past tax returns and checks I'd written during college that never matched any receipts. Jared told me to prepare for the long haul. I told him I wasn't going anywhere. That evening, I stood by my window, staring out at the Denver skyline. It was almost beautiful. How far I'd come and how far they'd pushed me. Then I typed out one final message. No flourishes, no explanations. To Darlene, I suggest you talk to a lawyer. I didn't wait for a reply. Instead, I blocked every number in my contacts tied to my family. Rosalind, Darlene, Leonard, even the landline at the old house I grew up in. For the first time in my life, silence was mine. And this time it wasn't weakness. It was a weapon. Jared called me the next morning, his voice tighter than usual. "You might want to check your work email," he said. I was still in my pajamas, sipping lukewarm coffee in my Denver apartment, staring blankly out the window at a city that finally felt like mine. I set the mug down and opened my inbox. Right there, under a fake sender name and throwaway email address, was the subject line. Concerned citizen tip. I clicked. The message was short and poison-tipped. Is your company aware you used client funds for personal travel? Funny how fast things unravel. My stomach didn't drop. Not anymore. I was way past being rattled. I took a screenshot, forwarded it to Jared, and muttered to myself, "Nice try." A few minutes later, Jared called again. "I just got one too. from a blocked number. Said if you don't drop the complaint, I shoulda watched what I let slip about your girl. He paused, voice calm but furious. They're bluffing, Marcy. But it's starting. Of course it was. You don't threaten power and expect silence in return. You corner a family that thrives on control and secrets. They come at you dirty. And that's exactly what they were doing. Jared had his tech guy trace the emails. Encrypted proxies, disposable domains, untraceable but obvious. It screamed Darlene. She didn't need a real plan. She just needed chaos. And she knew where to dig. The next evening, Jared sat across from me at the kitchen island, scrolling through old files. Anything in your past they could twist? Something minor they could blow up? I hadn't thought about Brian in years. My college boyfriend, the quiet one with soft eyes and a nervous laugh. Then I remembered. The favor. No, the trap. Darlene had once convinced Brian to loan her money, saying it was for something Marcy doesn't want people to know about. I never saw that cash, never even knew it happened until Brian broke up with me in a 3-sentence email that ended with, I don't know who you really are, and I don't want to find out. Back then, I thought he was just being paranoid. Now I knew better. They could twist it into fraud, I told Jared. He nodded grimly. We'll preempt it. Statement, affidavit from you, timeline from me. Anything else you remember? Dig it up. We worked in silence for over an hour. I pulled up old text logs, college email archives, even scanned my old Facebook messages. Every breadcrumb I'd once ignored now glowed red in hindsight. This wasn't just family dysfunction. This was war. When we wrapped up for the night, I turned to Jared and said, They're not just trying to discredit me. They're trying to destroy my name before the court can even say it. He looked at me, dead serious. Then we beat them to it. The next morning we compiled everything, the threats, the fake accusations, the manipulation with Brian. Jared packaged it and sent it to the legal team. He also included a request to expedite the hearing date, citing ongoing harassment. I sat down and typed a brief memo for my HR department, just in case the poison email ever resurfaced there. I added it to a growing file labeled Retaliation, printed a hard copy and locked it in my drawer. Around noon, I got a text. Clayton. Just a name on my screen, pulsing like a bad omen. They want to talk, it read. Mom says she has something to say. One last meeting, just you and her. No drama. I stared at it for a full minute before replying. Tell her I'll see her, in court. Then I deleted the thread. There was no more room for emotional bargaining. No more meetings dressed up as family reconciliations. No more pretending that this was anything other than what it was. A strategic smear campaign led by people who once claimed to love me. But they made one mistake. They assumed I'd keep quiet. They forgot what it looks like when the person they tried to break finally stops flinching. They forgot silence can scream. The morning of the hearing, Denver felt colder than usual. The sun was out, but its light didn't carry warmth, only clarity. Jared parked the car outside the courthouse, glanced over at me, and asked, You good? I nodded. I'm not afraid of them anymore. We walked in together, flanked by my attorney and a paralegal. My heels clicked sharp against the polished floors as we passed through security and into the courtroom. Inside, it was already buzzing. Low murmurs, the rustle of papers, the clink of belts and phones being dropped into trays. Then I saw them. Rosalind sat stiffly, hands folded in her lap like she was posing for a church portrait. Her eyes met mine just long enough to shoot a glance of disdain. Leonard leaned back in his seat like he was at a barbecue. And Darlene? She didn't even look up. She was chewing gum like this was just another dentist appointment. But it was Clayton who held my attention. He stood near the bench, pale and fidgety, fingers pulling at the sleeve of his blazer. I hadn't seen him in person since the cabin, and he looked like he hadn't slept. Our eyes locked briefly. No smile. Just a subtle nod. That was enough. The bailiff called the room to order. Then it began. The judge looked over his glasses and said, Let's proceed with witness testimony. Mr. Clayton Reynolds, you may take the stand. My brother stood slowly, cleared his throat, and walked forward. He didn't look at our mother. He didn't glance at Darlene. His voice trembled at first, but gained strength with each word. I'm Clayton Reynolds, And yes, I can confirm that I knew about the money. I didn't understand all of it, but I knew it wasn't hers. He paused, looked at the judge, then at me. And I knew my sister, Marcy, didn't agree to it. He went on, testifying about the payday loan forged in my name, the way Rosalind and Darlene pushed him into signing things when he was barely 21, how they told him I was too uptight, and that it was all family anyway. When he spoke those words aloud, they sounded like acid. I didn't say anything because I was scared, but that doesn't make it right. It never did. There was a stillness in the room. Not a single cough, no chair creak, just that raw silence that follows truth laid bare. When he stepped down, he didn't return to Rosalind's side. He sat behind me. The prosecution then took over. They displayed evidence on a projector, scans of forged authorizations, text message logs, wire transfers to hidden bank accounts under the label Household Emergency. Then they dropped the real bombshell. An account registered under Rosalind's name. Years of deposits, all tied back to checks written by me for family groceries, school supplies, rent help. Except they were never used for those things. The fund was hers, quiet, untouched. Rosalind stood up before her attorney could even object. I didn't steal anything. I was holding it for family, for emergencies. The judge didn't flinch. Did your daughter authorize the transfers? She never said not to. That's not authorization, ma'am. Rosalind faltered. And I saw something I hadn't seen in her since I was a child. Fear. The judge glanced at the evidence list, then at my file. This court finds sufficient probable cause to proceed with prosecution. Formal charges will be reviewed and delivered within the next 7 business days. And that was it. Gavel down. Hearing adjourned. Outside, I stood on the steps of the courthouse, the sun now burning through the clouds above me. I inhaled slowly, deeply, not because I was free, but because I was seen. Jared stepped beside me, slid his sunglasses on. They didn't expect you to make it this far. No, I said. They expected I'd stay quiet. Again. We didn't speak after that. We didn't need to, because silence, this time, wasn't surrender. It was victory echoing between every breath. 60 days passed. 2 months of statements, reports, follow-ups, emails, subpoenas, and updates. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even loud. Justice, as I came to learn, moves like a glacier, slow, unstoppable, and indifferent to the damage it scrapes clean on its way. I received the final notice on a Tuesday morning. A simple envelope, white and stiff, delivered to my apartment door. Inside, the formal judgment. Darlene and Leonard were found guilty of financial misrepresentation and conspiracy to commit fraud. Their sentence? 2 years suspended. No jail, but restitution ordered in full, and a permanent note on their record. They were to repay the $9,300 plus court costs in monthly installments under supervision. Rosalind? No criminal charges. Technicalities, the way the account was set up, the statute limitations, the passive role she played on paper. But I did sue her civilly. The judgment forced her to surrender the hidden fund, every last cent. Within a week, their assets were frozen. Their church friends stopped calling. Leonard lost a client he'd been working with for years. Darlene tried to post online about family betrayal, but the comments weren't what she expected. They did what to their own sister? Glad she took them to court. No one bought their version anymore. That, more than anything, was the justice I needed. Not handcuffs, accountability. I sat on the couch that night, a cup of tea in my hand, the court envelope sitting unopened now that I'd read it twice. My laptop pinged. New email, subject line, thank you. I clicked. It was from Ramona, a woman I barely knew, cousin of Nicholas, an old friend I'd once worked with. She wrote, I know we've never talked much, but I needed to reach out. I read about your case, I saw your name in the local legal newsletter, and I recognized the last name because I knew Darlene. Years ago, she borrowed money from my ex, told him it was for your cancer treatment. You were never sick, were you? I stared at the screen. No, I wasn't. Ramona continued. He dumped me because I warned him she was lying. Said I didn't care enough about your family. He thought I was cold. Turns out, I was just right. You didn't just win a case, Marcy. You changed the way I see boundaries. You made me realize that walking away isn't cruel. It's how we survive. You reminded me that silence isn't peace. It's just postponed pain. Thank you. I didn't cry. I just sat there, still, the weight of her words grounding me in a way nothing else had. It wasn't just personal anymore. It had never been. Darlene had spun this web for years, fabricating need, exploiting relationships, rewriting narratives where she was the hero, and I was the rich, absent sister who owed her everything. This case hadn't uncovered all of it, but it uncovered enough. That evening, I stepped out onto my balcony. Denver's skyline shimmered beneath the early August haze. The air was hot, thick with summer. Jared came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, chin resting on my shoulder. "You feel free yet?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. I looked out at the streets below, the people, the movement, the normalcy. "No," I said finally. "Not free." He pulled back slightly, concerned. "But I feel safe," I added. "And for now, that's enough." We stood there like that until the sun dipped behind the buildings, casting long shadows over the city. I thought about the woman I was 3 months ago, careful, quiet, complicit. The woman who smiled through family betrayals and called them quirks. The one who thought strength meant keeping peace. That woman was gone. She didn't disappear at the courthouse. She vanished the moment I chose to write it all down. To file the complaint. To speak when everyone expected me to swallow it. To draw a line and mean it. I didn't need to see them punished to feel powerful. I just needed to be the one who finally said no. I used to think loyalty meant silence. That keeping peace meant swallowing pain and excusing betrayal just because the people hurting me shared my blood. But here's what I've learned. Family isn't about obligation, it's about respect. And silence? Silence is not noble when it protects abuse. Silence is survival's enemy. If you're watching this and you're standing at that same cliff, between speaking up and staying quiet, I want you to know, you are not wrong for saying enough. You are not selfish for drawing a boundary, and you are not alone. I didn't just lose money, I lost trust, years, and parts of myself I'll never get back. But I gained something too, a life I finally own. So maybe you're watching this from a couch you paid for, but don't feel at home on. Or maybe someone you love keeps crossing the line and calling it love. If so, tell me, what would justice look like for you? Let's talk in the comments, share your story, or just say where you're watching from. If this story touched something in you, drop a 1 in the comments, so I know I'm not alone either. And if it didn't, that's okay too. Tell me why. Tell me where you're tuning in from. And if you want more stories like this, raw, real, and unapologetically human, hit that subscribe button. Because the truth deserves a voice, and this channel is here to help you find yours.